let me give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, who you are and what you guys do, and then we're going to start at ground zero.
Yep, sounds good. Jamie Smith, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for RPower. We're based in the Woodlands, Texas, and basically what we do is we're developers of distributed energy resources. So we're RPower. We are power. We build power plants. We build small-scale microgrids all the way up to, right now, we're under development, 200 to 400 megawatt, turbine-sized plants.
Are those in the United States?
Yes. Yes. We're focused mainly in the United States. We're only about 2.5 years old. So
Sure.
Right now, all of our projects are in ERCOT in Texas right here because the opportunity is just tremendous. But I was just on the phone this morning talking about storage opportunities in California. So, we're going to go beyond Texas.
Nice. Well, let's go back to the beginning. So I met you at PTC this year.
Yes, sir. That was an event. That was a cool event.
Is that your first data center conference?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah. So my team's been out and about. I spent most of the last year raising capital for our company.
Sure.
So now it's good to be back out and actually doing the business of the business, right?
Nice.
But yeah, that was my first data center conference. I'll be honest, I was not looking forward to going to Hawaii. It's just a long flight from Florida out there. I was like, oh, is this worth it?
It's tough.
And I got out there and I ended up staying 8 extra days, went to Maui.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I could see that. I mean, maybe that's something I have to put into my lexicon for next year. I've only been 2 times. In the last 2 years I went. I had a great time. I feel like I'm there in Oahu just one day too much every time, right? So I got to figure out a better way. But those conferences are great because this is a great example. A lot of people look, you don't go to conferences anymore to sometimes learn, and that's unfortunate if that's the way that some conferences are ran. But we definitely go to these conferences to network, and this is a great example, right?
Yeah, no, in the power gen world, especially, my background, a lot of it, I'll talk about it, I'm sure, is from the OEM side. Mm-hmm. So you end up going to the conferences and you're working for a large, manufacturer like GE or Generac, and all you do is sit there and hang out with your competitors, Cummins, Cat, et cetera. And PTC has everybody. It has everybody in the ecosystem. Customers are there. It's just a great opportunity to meet folks. And yeah, I'm definitely going back next year.
No, nice. Yeah. Well, there's some other conferences I want to introduce you to too.
For sure.
I've heard of this one called DCAC Live.
I've heard about that too.
All right. No, well, listen, where are you originally from? Let's go back before you were the COO of RPower, because I definitely want to know about RPower. Yep. And I want to understand what you guys, how you align yourselves in the market right now, and how I think there's tremendous value to the application of technology that you have. And there's the existential threat to this industry is power and people. So you have a solution for that. Right. We are power, right? So I want to dig into that. But before we understand who RPower is, I think a lot of us would like to understand who you are, because that says a lot about the company itself, right? So where are you from? From Florida?
Yeah, I'm from Florida. So I'm from a city called Newport Richey. It's north of Tampa, just north of Tampa, about 45 minutes. It's along the Gulf Coast. So I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, boating and fishing and catching grouper. And that's it's kind of my passion.
Is that what was your dad like a charter fisherman or?
No. So I grew up, with my mom and my stepdad, and that's who I refer to as dad. But no, he was a grocery store manager, and my mom was the registrar and still is at my high school. She actually started the year after I left, but she took the rest of the family through school. But my uncle was really the one who got me fishing. So.
Are you the oldest, youngest? Yes,
I'm the oldest of 3 boys.
Oldest of 3 boys, yep. And then. Were you an athlete or did you?
So the way I describe it, I played football in high school and I was an average player on a below average team, right? So I was more of probably a mathlete, right? Okay. I was always excelled academically, but yeah, we got our butt kicked a lot. So in fact, so kind of put it in perspective, Mike Penix Jr., who was just on University of Washington, yep. Played against his dad.
You did?
Yeah, and his dad was just as good. I mean, he wouldn't remember me or ever, we just ran around the field chasing him. So
I got you. Yep. But you end up going to the Coast Guard Academy.
Coast Guard Academy, yep.
What? So why didn't you want to be on the other side of the river?
Because Coast Guard does really cool stuff, man. You get to drive great boats, fast boats, and
Can I ask a quick question about the Coast Guard Academy? Yep. You know that big historical ship that's there?
Yeah, the Eagle. Yep.
Okay, now is the rumor behind the Eagle? Because I was on the Navy side of the river. You're on the Coast Guard side, and we obviously saw you guys all the time, especially you midshipmen during your. You guys are out there in your little sailboats, your dinghies all the time, right? Is it true that ship was once a Nazi ship.
Yeah.
And we repurposed it in the war or something like that.
Yep. It's a German war prize, right?
It was.
Yep.
Okay.
German war prize. My classmate actually from the academy, Jess Rozzy Oaks, she's actually the current captain, first female captain of the Eagle.
Really?
Yep. Absolute badass. So pretty proud. Got to go spend some time and have lunch with her on it a few months ago. But yeah, so all the freshmen, after their freshman year, they go sail the Eagle for 5 to 6 weeks, and then they switch out and another group comes in. But yeah.
So you have to do it too.
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
Yeah. It's kind of a rite of passage.
Interesting. Yep. I wonder if I was around watching that thing go up and down the wall. Yeah. Anyways, who knows? But anyways, you picked up going to Coast Guard, and tell me why you picked that route.
Yeah.
You had a couple options, you said.
Yeah. No. So I got interested, I was the first person in my family to go to a 4-year college, very blue collar family, worked hard, and my parents really installed some, hard work ethic, and not only me, but my 3 brothers. But I knew I wanted to go to college, right? I knew I wanted like something better. I didn't know what it was, right? I also knew my parents didn't have a bunch of money to cut a check for me to go to college. So when I was in middle school, actually, I'm taking you a little ways back, but I was in middle school, actually, my best friend, Rob Melnick at the time. He took me to remember the arena football teams they used to have back then?
Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, Tampa Bay Storm game. And I went with his uncle, and his uncle was Bruce Melnick, which was the first Coast Guard astronaut.
Really?
Yeah. And so I went with his uncle and his brother. So his uncle was telling me about the academy, and his brother had just got accepted to the Coast Guard Academy. And I'm like, well, what's this all about? And I was like, 4-year degree. You got a job when you're done. Oh, the job looks pretty cool. It's a great education. So I kind of started researching all the military academies, West Point, Annapolis Air Force. And then like all through high school, my whole purpose was I got to get into the academies. That's just going to be, how I go to college, how to put myself through college. And I get to serve my country, and I get to do pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And, you get to go back and get a master's, and they'll pay for it. You can have command at an early age. And so I worked through that whole process, got into Annapolis, got into West Point, got into the Coast Guard Academy. So I kind of had my pick. I didn't apply to the Air Force. Wasn't appealing for me for some reason. And I chose the Coast Guard.
Nice.
So.
There's there's no really, as we would sit off camera, I would be trashing Coast Guard left, right.
And center, you're right. Yeah. Love the email, the tube top.
I got you. But the reality is, we're all family. If you are in the Department of Defense, and Coast Guard, is that Department of Transportation?
It's DHS.
Is it really?
Yeah,
all right.
DHS after 9/11. Yep.
But I think if you look at it, I don't think any of us. I've served with VMI, Citadel. What are a couple of the other? Obviously all the other academies, but there's a few VMI, Citadel, and there's one more I thought that are pretty prevalent. But I had seen and served with Coast Guard guys too. Mm-hmm. There were guys that would go from Annapolis to the Coast Guard Academy for a year back and forth. Yeah. Like there's a guy I was just talking to the other day that he was Air Force Academy, but he did 1 year playing football 150 and under. Mm-hmm. And he did it when he was at the Naval Academy for his 1 year, because you guys do those transfers.
Yeah, they do the semesters. Yeah.
So you picked the Coast Guard, but when you picked them, did you have something specific that you wanted to do, like rescue diver? Or?
No, well, I wanted to be a cutterman. I wanted to be on ships.
Okay, right? You did.
Yeah, I wanted to be on ships, and it was actually pretty specific. So there's 250 to 300 people per class at the Coast Guard Academy. So entering, and then it dwindles down. There's pretty, significant amount of folks that kind of get weeded out, in the process. Or it used to be. That's a little bit
the design. That's the process. It's supposed to thin the herd.
And so I liked the small size of the school. And then there was something that really drew me, and it actually came to fruition, was your second tour as a JG, you can actually be captain of your own ship. It's a patrol boat. Yeah, it's a patrol boat, right? So it's mine was an 87-foot patrol boat. The old ones were 82, and then I got a brand new one. And it was just the coolest gig ever, right?
So do you have any cool stories?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of cool stories about that. But and it really, that tour in particular really, taught me a lot about leadership, good and bad, and accelerated me in professional growth. But that really kind of drew me to the academy. It was like, the Coast Guard seemed to like push down responsibility to the lowest levels, and all services do. I realized that at the end, like all services do. But, I was 24 years old, a JG, didn't have a clue taking a ship through the Panama Canal.
And how much, like people, to put it into context, how much does that ship cost? 85-footer.
The 87, I think they were building for about $9 million. Then.
Okay. So listen, like, here you go, kid. You're in charge
But that was without the ammo and all, like that was just coming out of the shipyard.
Plus the crew. You know what I'm saying? So like you have souls plus millions of dollars worth of stuff, and you're a young person being tasked with that level of advanced weapons, machinery, technology, and humans that you're in care of.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's unique that the military offers. So, I mean, you wanted that right out of the gate, it sounds like. You must have did you engage with all the fishing that you did in high school or whatever? Did you engage with a lot of Coast Guard?
No, not really, right? And like that's the thing. So that's the thing about the Coast Guard. It's like typically like the recreational community actually engages with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is a bunch of volunteers that will go out and do safety checks and everything.
Sure.
Not the actual Coast Guard, unless one, they're in trouble and they're getting saved.
Yeah.
Right. Or two, they did something bad and they're getting arrested. Right.
Sure.
But for the most part, you don't see a lot of the Coast Guard engaging in recreational boating on a regular basis. They'll be patrolling and making sure everything's okay. But, so there wasn't anything like that significant that happened when I was younger. That'd be like, oh, I got to be one of those guys.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Cool. So you get in and you knew exactly what you wanted. A cutter, you said?
Yeah. I wanted to go on ships. I had no desire to fly. I had no desire to, all the rescue swimmers are enlisted. Right. And so, and didn't want to do the marine safety, vessel inspection stuff. I wanted to be on ships. And I would have probably actually stayed in for 30 years if they would have just let me go back to back to back.
Really?
I don't know how my wife would have felt about me being on that much.
Where were you stationed at?
So my first tour out of the academy, right? So the academy is in New London, Connecticut, across from the river, Groton there. I went back to St. Petersburg, so about an hour from where I grew up, and I was on a 210-foot cutter. And we did a lot of patrolling in the Caribbean. Primarily,
is that like counter drug interdiction?
Yeah, counter drug interdiction, a lot of illegal alien interdiction, right? So we spent a lot of time like in the Florida Straits, picking up people, especially back then. This was 2000 to 2002. And then 9/11 happened.
Oof, right. Game changer. Yeah,
it was a game changer. Like our ship was actually torn apart and we were going to be decommissioned in 35 days. And we were back together and underway like in 48 hours.
Shut up.
Yeah. So, and really no one knew what you were supposed to be doing then, right? So
just patrolling.
Yeah. So basically what happened is every port, any foreign flag vessel, which is like 98% of the vessels coming into the United States, was boarded if it was the first time after 9/11, and all the crew manifests were inspected and checked out. Just to run against, FBI list.
Sure.
Whatever.
Just being safe. Dot the I's, cross the T's. Did you guys find anything?
No. But we did that. I mean, we did it for quite a while. Like 9/11 changed the mission of the Coast Guard for quite a bit, into more. I know everybody jokes that, like we're knee-high Navy and all this stuff.
Puddle pirates.
Yeah, puddle pirates and all that thing. But, we actually got underway for a long time and we would go elsewhere, and 9/11, I remember it changed our mission set to pull us back closer to the borders for a while.
Can I ask a question, a naive question? I don't want to. How often do you sometimes go to sea for 30 days straight, or like longer deployments sometimes on patrol and stuff?
Yeah, it depends. And, my Coast Guard buddies are going to watch this because I'm dating myself. I've been out a bit, but, there is cutters that actually steam with the Navy, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll go away for six months a year, do a full deployment, right? The patrol boats, the patrol boat classes that I was captain of, we would do patrols, 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes longer. And then the medium endurance cutters, like that 210-foot ship that I was on, that was typically like a 6 to 8 week patrol.
I gotcha.
Yeah, but it's just different because you would be, you're 8 weeks in, 8 weeks out. So it was a cycle, that you're always on. So,
like port and starboard or
pretty
blue
much.
And gold crew type stuff?
Well, no, the same crew stuck with the ships.
Okay,
right?
so that time they were in.
But there was 3 ships in St. Pete and 2 of them were always gone.
Okay.
So,
I gotcha. I guess it was the upkeep, and then you guys would come out of service and do maintenance and PMs.
Exactly.
And all. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then you have scheduled dry docks. We did TISTA, right? I forget what it stands for anymore, but you know, you had it in the Navy. We did it with the Navy. So like the actual like 3 week, you know, like, are you ready to go to war?
Oh, we called it TREES, technical readiness exams.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, similar.
You
Yeah.
have ORS's, operational reactor arts safeguard exams, and then TREES. So yeah, you have to go through before you could deploy.
Yep.
The ship has to go through some trials.
Exactly.
And then make sure the crew knows what to do and the ship could handle the integrity of the mission, right? And then once you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah, it was like all that, you know, DC, damage control training, firefighting, you know, weapons control. I mean, our weapons weren't like what you were dealing with, but that.
No, I was a submarine guy, so our weapons were water slugs, or you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
we're shooting torpedoes, countermeasures. Well, so how long were you in for then?
So I graduated the academy in 2000, right, and got out in 2010.
Okay, so you did 10, and then because you. So what was it like throughout that other time, you know, from September 11th? So you had 9 years post September 11th.
Yeah. So my career, I did my first about 4.5 years on ships. So I did my first 2 years on that 210-foot cutter I was telling you about. And then I did the next 2.5 years on the patrol boat. I actually commissioned it. It was a brand new ship. They built, I think they built like 90 of them in Lockport, Louisiana. Got to spend some time on the bayou. The best people.
So
in the world.
did you drive it yourself out of there?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
You go back to the mothership and you get I guess they do that with helicopters, like go back to the Sikorsky plant, fly it home, you know, but I had no idea that, you guys were taking them all the way out from there. That makes sense, I guess. Someone
and that was home ported in San Diego. Right.
So so how'd you sail it?
Slow to conserve fuel.
But did you go through the Suez
Panama Canal?
Panama, I'm sorry. So you did. Okay. I was like, how long does that take then?
We were doing combination of getting the ship ready to commission and training, and then slow transit to conserve fuel. So we made 11 port calls in like 6 weeks between Louisiana to San Diego, right? And there was myself and 10 enlisted guys, right? Okay. And towards the end of the trip, they're like, "Oh, we're ready to get home to see our families." I'm like, "You guys are probably going to want to stay in Cabo a couple nights just to relax before you get home." Because like 2 weeks later, like, "Hey, can we go back to Cabo?"
Yeah. Well, you allowed to pick wherever you want to stop to. Hey, when you see the
pretty
port,
much
need where the fuel's at.
Yeah. We had a budget. We had to stick to. We had to get fuel, so we held I think it was 2,700 gallons of fuel. And like, if I would go wide out, at 27, 28 knots, I was burning 170 gallons an hour. Right. So
how long can you be at sea
you
for?
do that math.
Yeah.
But if I went at 6 to 8 knots, then,
putter for a long time.
Yeah. But it takes a long time to get there too. It was about 5,000 miles we transited.
So what's it like from a leadership perspective to take over a warship that has 10 souls on it with you, it sounds like, or a patrol boat, and have to be, you're at harm's way the minute you pull away from that pier, technically, right? So what's that like at the age that you were at, and what did you learn about leadership, and how did that have an impact on what you're doing now?
Yeah, it was pretty, so I was 24. I think there was 2 people in the crew younger than me, right? And I was fortunate to have 2 people that I still consider mentors, my chief engineer, John Phillips, and then Justin Vanden Heuvel. First class petty officer. He's now a commander in the Coast Guard. Yeah.
You guys do that pretty prevalently in the Coast Guard, do you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like I made an impact on Van too, because he's a 6'5" Dutch guy, totally tatted up, just like, I'm going to be a District 11, which is a California sailor my whole career, and now he's a commander, and he's about to I think he's like a year or 2 away from being a master cutterman, which means you spent more than 20 years at sea.
Really?
Yeah. And he's a phenomenal leader. And they taught me a lot about leadership, right? And I think 2 things that you kind of take away, and I was talking to my wife about this a couple of days ago. It's like, have you ever had to teach someone to drive a boat, right? And it's a little bit different, because if you're just telling them everything to do, they're never going to learn. Yeah. So you got to get this comfort level, right? You got to get this comfort level to let them make mistakes without crashing the ship or the boat or whatever they're doing, if that makes sense. And I think as a leader, that has taught me to allow people to make mistakes, but make mistakes that aren't irreparable or that we can't go back and fix.
Sure.
Right. So, if I got a sales manager now or a young operator, and I can see, I wouldn't do that, but is it going to harm anything? No, you let them work through it, and allow them to make that mistake. So, that's one thing. And then just having good mentors. Those two guys were great,
Yeah.
and I feel like I taught them as much as they taught me because, they had a lot of experience on me, it's, just your crusty old chief and
Sure.
in your first class.
Well, that's their job too, is to grow and train JMOs, junior military. Like when you come out, you know enough to know hopefully that you don't know shit. And then some senior NCO will come up and teach you some shit. Right.
Yeah.
And, that's the way the military has always raised their own. Yeah. I mean, like there's something behind that psychology, but it works incredibly well.
It does. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a very tried and tested, proven system for mentorship. Yeah. So before we cut off the Coast Guard stuff, any cool stories that you're allowed to share, or are you going to have to kill us?
No. One of the coolest things, I listened to another podcast and you asked one of this, so I was thinking about one of the coolest stories actually happened to me when I was a cadet.
Okay.
And I was going into my my senior year, and they send you to ships. And I went to a 110-foot patrol boat out of Miami. It was
this is like your 2 weeks during the summer mission cruise or something.
Yeah, but this was like I was there 11 weeks, right?
Oh well, the whole summer.
Yeah, it was good. Miami Beach, 11 weeks, good time. Just turned 21. Had
no expenses at all.
No,
zero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I was on the Coast Guard cutter Matagorda. And CO was Scott Sharp, lieutenant, super good guy. And of course, like you're, a 21-year-old cadet, and you think like the lieutenants who are like 28 are old people, right?
Yeah.
So we were patrolling in the southern Bahamas, and I actually had worked real hard and was able to get underway OOD qualified as a cadet. Right. And the CO, like, again,
as a cadet, they let you stand officer of the deck.
You let me stand officer of the deck. Right. And it was the CO was in a situation. Have you ever taught anybody to drive a ship, or drive a boat? And so I was up there and I was coming off watch, and I was on the mid watch, right? Of course, because they give you the mid watch because you're the guy.
Nub.
Yeah. And I'm like for the 15 minutes before I was getting off the watch, I kept seeing something like blip, like off our starboard quarter on the radar. Uh-huh. And I'm like, man, and I go with the binoculars, and we're darkened ship, so no lights on or anything. We're
on patrol
for bad guys.
Gotcha.
And I kept seeing this blip. And so the captain was relieving me because he liked the 4 to 8. So he comes up to the bridge, and I'm like, Captain, I was like, gave him the whole, debrief and everything. I was like, but I keep seeing this on the radar. Like, watch this. And it popped up right when I said it. And he's like, well, did you light them up? I'm like, no, we're darkened ship. And he's like, let's light them up. See if there's anything over there. He lit them up, and literally there was a drug smuggling boat like following us. We're not sure if they saw us or not at the time. Right. And like, but they were
trailing you.
They were just trailing us. And
they had a radar probably.
So no, they don't. These are they're go fast boats, right? They're open center consoles with a bunch of fuel, 55 fuel drive, and that's it. And so we lit them up, and as soon as we lit them up, took off. We ended up chasing them for about 8 hours, and finally got close enough to them when he refueled because they were fast. But the seas picked up, which helped us, and got close to him, and then we took out his outboards.
The old fashioned way.
Yeah, the old fashioned way.
Nice.
And so it was like my first drug bust. It was 21.
You were a cadet.
And I was a cadet. Yeah,
you were the OD, being relieved by the skipper on your first drug bust.
Yeah.
That's a pretty gangsta story, even for the coasties.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, like, listen, that's a cool story.
Yeah. So I was hooked. That's definitely knew I wanted to go back to sea, want to be skipper.
Were you pretty pimp going back to school your senior year? Like, listen, I don't know what you guys did this summer, but let me tell you.
People did cool shit.
We didn't have midshipmen when they were riding our boat ever qualify a thing, right? I mean, like, that's just not. Yeah. So for you to be able to do that, that's pretty bomb. Right.
You asked about the Eagle. There's actually every summer you'll get 1 or 2 cadets that qualify underway OD during the summer.
Really?
On the
As
Eagle.
A freshman on the Eagle?
As going into their senior year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, damn. I was like, man, that's a huge goal. Yeah. I'd love it.
Yeah. So,
man, that's pretty amazing. And I've never been on that ship, obviously, but I got to see it and sail by it all the time. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what a beautiful ship. And then someone was like, well, the history is. I'm like, that's like, the famous story about Rod Stewart that we all heard in high school. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it true? It's probably not true, right?
No, there's actually the aft cabin in there. There's pictures
of the swastikas and
Hitler,
stuff.
There's pictures of Hitler staying on the ship and stuff before. Yeah. So it's legit.
But I mean, you can understand why that'd be hard to understand and believe. I'm like, the Coast Guard Academy.
How'd they get that? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they would have figured that out. So So listen, and I mean, that's a pretty bum ass story. So when you left, because I think I talked to you about this, did you get into the GE JLOP program?
Yeah. So
I have a brother that went through that through the Academy Mafia thing too, right? So explain to people who don't know what that is.
Yeah. So GE, and I don't know if they have it anymore because there's been so much change there, had what they call the Junior Officer Leadership Program. And it was for former military officers that basically didn't know what the heck they wanted to do, like when they got out of the military, but were bright. And I mean, the year I applied, I think it was like 1,700 people applied and they took like 15 of us.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know if I would have got in other than the guys like, Coast Guard, what the hell is this? You know, like
Coast My brother was on that board one time, and I remember one time he sent me a note. He's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, he was my WEPS." And he's like, "Hey, he's applied." There was 2 guys that were officers on the submarine that I served on that had applied to the GE program.
Yeah.
And it was very. I mean, he went through it, and I think it was essentially in 2 years you get your Six Sigma champion black belt and an MBA and a bunch of other. But it's a really packaged up, very deliberate and intentional. Like I think every 6 months you move to a different business unit within GE or something, right?
Right. Yeah. So so I got in it. At the time I had several other offers like Apple and Consultant and some really good offers. And in fact, the GE one was like the least paying. You know, but I was like, wow, this is power, you know, get to see really what I want to do.
What year was this? Did GE offer?
2010.
Because GE, there was a time where GE was like the most powerful company in the world.
Yeah. I mean, they're all within a range, right? Though, like you have a lot of 10 years military experience. I had a master's in engineering at the time because I did that when I was in the Coast Guard. And then when I got out, you know, you're still starting over. Am I going to get into operations? Am I going to get into sales? What am I going to get into? And so the program, you had to get at least your green belt Six Sigma. I went back and did an executive MBA on the weekends. It allowed me to do that. And then you can do 3 or 4 rotations. You got 2 years. Yeah. I did my first rotation in heavy duty gas turbine services. So services on the big frame turbines, steam turbines, and then all the alternators. So it was like the long-term service agreement contracts that GE sells and makes a bundle of money on. Yeah. So I cut my teeth, but it was pretty cool because you got just coming into power. Like I knew engines, I'd been on boats, had diesel engines, diesel generators, but getting into the turbine world, I was able to just get a high level overview of what the power gen world was like globally. I mean, at the time, I think GE had like 40% of the gas turbine fleet market. In the world. So I did that, and then the guy who had brought me into the Joel program called me up. He's like, "What are you going to do for your second rotation?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, why don't you come try selling Jambacher gas engines, right?" And so this is where I got into distributed power, reciprocating gas engines, and I did about 5 months, and I started to look for my next tour, but I was getting close to a sale. Right. Okay. And my boss came up to me. He's like, you know, you don't have to do 2 years. And if you make that sale and you could roll off, I could pay you a commission. I was like, I'll take the commission. Nice. And because I just knew I liked it. And
you liked that side of the business. That was your second rotation?
That was my second rotation. Yeah. Yep. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do in my third rotation because I love what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Why would you?
Yeah. And so I was in the Jambacher gas engine business, and that's where we really started getting distributed power. We were looking at like combined heat and power projects, burning landfill gas, burning, any sort of like digester, gas that's produced. And then really what I was focusing on was peaking plants, right? And
like, what are those?
Like plants that run 1,000, 2,000 hours a year to provide power to the grid.
Peak shaving?
Peaking, but from a merchant perspective. So peak shaving, I normally consider peak shaving like if you have an on-site load and you're trying to reduce their load during high power prices. Right. This was actually turning these
It's a primary though? But is it a primary?
Yeah, primary. Okay. A merchant plant that you turn on, put into the market when the power prices are right.
Interesting. So who would buy those? And some infrastructure, real estate asset?
RPower now.
Okay.
Yeah, but independent power producers were buying them, but a lot of developers were buying them.
Okay. And how did you, so walk us through a little bit more, pretend as though, I'm a sailor, and walk us through the genesis behind how you got into that, and then how you started looking at the methods that you guys are doing it now, where you're going out and essentially sounds like you're in a roll-up phase. Yep. Okay. So you raise capital, you go roll up a bunch of stuff, and the power is to aggregate that under one collective umbrella. And
yeah. So, a couple things to unpack there. So I got into I was kind of looking more at GE. Everything was power. I was in GE Energy, right? So I was looking, at the time, everybody was rushing into the renewable business. You still had the heavy duty gas turbines business, which was like pretty legacy GE folks. And then they had bought a couple reciprocating generator businesses, Yambacher and Waukesha. And they were really small, nimble businesses within a big empire. And
were they based out of America? Those
Yambacher is based out of, I was actually there last week. It's based out of Austria. So Yambach, Austria.
Okay.
And then they bought a company called Waukesha Gas Engines based out of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Right. And Waukesha did more gas compression. But they were smaller companies. At the time, I think they totaled 2 billion, right? And that's small in GE land at the time. And it really gave opportunity to, again, have a lot of responsibility at a very, new to the business level, right? And so that was very attractive, but they were just doing some cool applications. And this distributed power at the time, I was like, all right, renewables are coming on the grid. This is great. Everybody's rushing to the wind business at GE, but gas-fired generation has a role. And that's the thesis of RPower, has a role in our future and transition to a completely, zero carbon future. It's very important.
Sure.
And, the proliferation of natural gas was going on at the time, 2010, really building out the gas infrastructure. And so that was really the draw. I was like, gas is going to grow. These generators are cool. I mean, like, look at them. They're big, badass generators.
Yeah.
This will be a lot of fun building projects with them.
So are they mainly natural gas?
Natural gas.
Only or?
Yeah. So these generators that we were selling at the time would burn, low BTU fuel and high BTU fuel. So they would burn, landfill gas, wastewater treatment gas that went through a digester, as well as field gas. So flare gas that was high BTU that maybe had like butane, propane, ethane, those kind of constituents in it.
Interesting. So they run on everything.
Yep.
So how big are those size engines typically?
So the Yambacher product went up to 4.4 megawatts, and then and then one of my responsibilities was bringing a 10 megawatt unit to the 60 hertz market. They decided to keep it 50 hertz only, just on a competitive basis.
So it just stays in Europe then?
It stays in Europe. Yeah.
Okay. So interesting. So there's a 10 megawatt single gen UPS that's at 50 hertz you can find in Europe right now, but you can't find in the United States.
Yeah, but some of the work that we're doing in RPower, there's an 18.8 megawatt gas gen that we're using, that we're working with some folks that
okay,
on possible projects with. Yes.
So I got you.